At my daughter's wedding rehearsal, she turned to me, her eyes cold as stone, and said, "You're not welcome at the ceremony." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just smiled, walked out of that hall, and made one phone call. By the time the sun set, there was no wedding. That's the story people like to whisper about, the one neighbors still bring up with hushed voices, as though saying it out loud might curse them. But for me? For me, it wasn't just some scandal at the country club or another tale of family drama gone too far. It was my life, my blood, my sacrifice, and my betrayal. You see, stories like this don't happen in an instant. They don't erupt overnight. No, betrayals this deep are slow-burning fires. They smolder in the dark corners of your life while you work, while you sacrifice, while you trust. And then one day, without warning, the flames rise up and engulf everything you thought was yours. When my daughter looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't welcome at her wedding, all I could think about were the decades that had led to that moment. The nights I stayed awake sewing her prom dress because we couldn't afford the designer brand she wanted. The double shifts I took at the hospital so she could go to college debt-free. The house I refinanced twice to keep her dreams alive. And yet, there I stood, a stranger in the life I had built for her. I want you to feel the weight of that silence in the room after she said it. The way the other guests shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the floor, pretending they hadn't heard. My ex-husband smirking in the corner, satisfied with what had just happened. My daughter's soon-to-be in-laws whispering behind their polished hands, pleased that the messy mother had finally been cut out. It should have broken me. It should have shattered me into pieces. But instead, I felt something else rise in my chest. Something hotter than grief. Something sharper than sorrow. I felt revenge. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I simply nodded and walked out the heavy oak doors of that church. Outside the air was cool, crisp, early autumn. I remember the scent of burning leaves in the distance, the sound of my shoes crunching gravel as I crossed the parking lot. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady. My voice, calm. "Hello," I said when the line connected. "It's time." "Do it." The man on the other end didn't ask questions. He simply replied, "Understood." I hung up, slipped the phone back into my purse, and drove away as if nothing had happened. By the time the next morning came, the entire wedding, my daughter's perfect, fairy tale, once-in-a-lifetime event, was nothing but ashes. Figuratively, of course, but in all the ways that mattered, it no longer existed. And she would have to face the truth. That the woman she dismissed, the mother she discarded, still held more power than she ever imagined. But before I tell you exactly how I unraveled the entire event, before I show you how a lifetime of sacrifices twisted into a single, cold-blooded plan for revenge, you need to understand the full picture. You need to know what came before, because only then will you understand why my daughter thought she could humiliate me, and why she was so terribly, tragically wrong. This is not the story of a weak mother. This is not the story of someone who begged for crumbs of affection. Number. This is the story of a woman who gave everything, and learned too late that some children mistake sacrifice for servitude. And when those children spit in your face, when they tell you you're no longer welcome in their shining new life, you either break or you rise. I chose to rise. And the wedding? The one that was supposed to be the happiest day of her life? I made sure it never happened. That's where my story begins. Not with the betrayal itself, but with the fire it lit inside me. A fire that would burn through the lies, through the manipulation, through every last shred of false loyalty my daughter had been fed by the people around her. It began on that night, with a smile. Because sometimes revenge doesn't start with rage. Sometimes it starts with silence. Narrators pause, like taking a breath before diving into the past. So let me take you back. Back to the beginning. Back to the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the choices that built the empire my daughter thought was hers to inherit. Let me show you why her words, "You're not welcome at my wedding," weren't just cruel. They were fatal. Fatal to her plans. Fatal to her marriage. Fatal to the life she thought she had secured without me. Because when you cut out the one person who held the keys to everything, you don't just wound them, you destroy yourself. And that is exactly what she did. When people ask me when the story truly began, I don't say, "at the rehearsal dinner." It began in a one-bedroom apartment with a broken heater and a baby who screamed through winter nights until dawn. It began with my breath fogging in the cold and my palms pressed to the little radiator like a prayer, willing it to live, willing us to live. It began the first time I said no to myself and yes to my child. Her name is Elena. She was born with a cry that sounded like protest, like she was offended by how bright the world was. I used to kiss that little crease above her brow and whisper, "All right, warrior. I'll make it soft for you," and I tried. Dear God, how I tried. I married Mark because stability looks pretty when you are 23 and tired, because a steady paycheck and a smile that promises, "I've got this," is a lullaby to a young mother who hasn't slept in months. He was charming, in that practiced way that photographs well at barbecues and work parties. He liked to lay a hand on my shoulder when he introduced me. "This is my wife, she's a nurse." Like he owned both my job and my name. Back then I mistook that hand for love. The hospital taught me everything I needed to know about sacrifice. 10-hour shifts turning into 14, bruises on my hips from the carts, notes scribbled on the backs of glove boxes because I couldn't find paper. I brought that devotion home with me. Every splinter of time that sleep left me, I spent counting bottles, clipping coupons, stretching bills like rubber bands that were always about to snap. I learned how to make dinners out of nothing and birthdays look rich with a packet of balloons and a second-hand cake stand. Elena's first dolls were thrift store rescues that I bathed in the sink until the water ran clear. When Mark got promoted, his money changed zip codes before it ever saw our kitchen table. New suits, an upgraded car that he called an investment. Drinks with the team because relationships are currency. I handed him a home where the laundry was folded to military tightness, where Elena's hair was braided before dawn, where the checkbooks balanced by the skin of my teeth. I gave him a life he could show off. He gave me receipts. There's a truth about mothers that nobody says out loud. We build things we never put our names on. I built Elena's future in layers. School fees, camp deposits, violin lessons she quit after 2 summers, but that gave her posture I still recognize in photographs. When the Magnet High School said yes, I added weekend tutoring. When college whispered maybe, I took extra shifts until I forgot what my own reflection looked like without the paper mask lines etched across my cheeks. Elena learned young that doors opened when I pushed. Her school counselor called her poised. I called her lucky. I did her FAFSA while she was at senior beach week, because that's what mothers do. We write the boring heroics into fine print and file it before anyone else notices the deadline. Mark noticed different things. He noticed that his boss played golf at the Whitmore course. He noticed that a certain kind of wine impressed a certain kind of client. He noticed that Elena's boyfriend, Andrew, came from a family where holidays were catered and photos looked like magazine spreads, and he treated both the boy and the pedigree like rare collectibles. When the Whitmores called me sweet at a fundraiser, Mark squeezed my fingers under the table as if to reward good behavior. I remember the night tuition came due and we were short. Again, always again. I found the numbers at 3 a.m., sitting in the dark with a pencil that had chewed marks all along its body, like it had lived 100 anxious lives. I could have asked Mark to cancel one golf trip. I didn't. I refinanced the little rental my mother left me, the one bedroom we once froze in, the place I had dreamed of keeping as a backup plan if everything else failed. I signed the papers with a hand that didn't shake and told myself this is what legacy looks like, turning your past into your child's springboard. Elena went off to university like a queen boarding a train. I tucked hand warmers in her suitcase and a note in her coat pocket. Call me when the leaves turn. She did, the first autumn. We sent pictures of our pumpkin pies to each other and argued about whose crust was better. She came home for winter and slept on the couch with the dog because her room had become my sewing corner for side gigs. That night she inched closer under the throw blanket and asked, almost shy, "Mum, do you think I'll ever be as strong as you?" I laughed and kissed her hair. Stronger. People don't become unrecognizable all at once. They change in corners, in whispers. It started with fewer calls, shorter visits, new friends with old names, the kind that open doors in marble buildings. She learned to hold a wine glass by the stem and ideas by the edges. At Thanksgiving she corrected my pronunciation of a French dish I'd made from a recipe online, the one I'd laboured over until the smoke detector cried. "It's not coq au vin, Mum." Mark laughed with her. She brought Andrew for Christmas the year she interned at a firm whose lobby smelled like polished stone and old money. He was kind in the way of men who have never needed to be cruel to get what they want. He kissed my cheek and said, "Your home is very cozy." He meant small. Elena's smile at his words landed like a paper cut, shallow and stinging. The first time I met Andrew's mother, Vivian, she wore a pearl choker and looked at my hands before she looked at my face. My nails were short, clean, filed flat. She smiled the way people smile when they are taking inventory. "Nursing," she said. "How noble." I thought, dangerous jobs get called noble when people don't plan to do them. She offered me a thin flute of champagne and a thinner slice of approval. "Eleanor speaks so highly of your perseverance." She didn't say sacrifice. People like Vivian don't use words that taste like labor. When Elena graduated, I held a banner that spelled her name wrong because the cheap site would not refund the rush order. I laughed and held it higher. Mark made a speech. He made sure he mentioned his promotion, his commitment to our family vision, his confidence that our daughter will do great things. He didn't say who paid the interest on the loans when there wasn't enough. He didn't say who kept the lights on when the power company called. He didn't say who ironed the wrinkles out of a dress with a pot of steaming water when there was no time and no money left for dry cleaning. But then again, nobody asked. After graduation came the apartment, a starter. Elena called it, except the rent could have purchased my entire street. She sent me a list of furniture she liked, and because I'm the kind of fool mothers are, I drove 3 towns over to pick up a vintage dining table for $40 and refinished it until it gleamed like a new coin. When I delivered it, she angled her head, assessing. "It's sweet." We may upgrade later that we didn't include me. I did not say no when Mark asked for a divorce. I did not beg. He said phrases like, "We've outgrown each other, and our paths have diverged," like we were a pair of hiking buddies who had reached a fork in the woods, not a man and a woman who had run a marathon tied together at the ankle. He packed his suits and his favorite whiskey, and I packed the silence he left behind. He moved 2 neighborhoods closer to the Whitmores because he said the commute was better. I knew a different commute he meant, the one that travels along status, the one that always ends up at a gate with a guard. Elena took the news with a shrug I didn't recognize. "People change, Mom." Then she added, as if to reassure me, "Andrew's parents have invited us to the club next weekend. It'll be good for networking." Networking. Marriage, divorce, money. They all looked like events on a calendar she was managing now, not storms to survive. I nodded and told her I'd make lemon bars for the guard at the gate. She rolled her eyes. "That's not how it works here." It became a habit. I paid things before anyone else noticed they were due. The florist invoice for Elena's engagement party, the deposit on the venue when the Whitmore's assistant forgot to send it and our window nearly closed, the insurance on the ring Andrew put on her finger, because no one had thought to do it, and the appraisal came in higher than my first 2 years' salary combined. At night I lay awake and talked to the ceiling the way some people talk to God. "It's fine," I told the old plaster. "It's only money." But money is never only money when it's the thing your time becomes when it dies. The day Elena asked me to help her pick a dress, I cried in the car before I went in. Not big tears. Small ones, the kind you pinch away so your eyes don't look red in photographs. She stepped out of the dressing room, and she was luminous. I wished the mirror would swallow her whole so she'd never be hurt by the world. "Do I look like a Whitmore?" she asked, twirling. I smiled as if the word didn't bruise my mouth. "You look like mine." It should have been a season of joy. Instead, it turned into a season of paperwork. Contracts and vendors and meal minimums and chair upgrades. I knew which baker would sneak you an extra tier and which DJ would read a room better than a priest. I negotiated the tent when the forecast went grey. I packed emergency kits with stain wipes, clear nail polish, safety pins, aspirin. People credited the wedding planner sent me emojis. One afternoon, I stopped by Elena's apartment with a garment bag and a jar of soup. Andrew opened the door and looked at the soup as if I'd brought a live animal. "We don't really do leftovers," he said, leftovers like a foreign word. I laughed. "It's fresh." He was already texting, thumbs tight with impatience. "Elena's not here." I set the soup on the counter and smoothed my hand over the garment bag. "This is her veil." My friend at the hospital, her aunt, saved the lace from a dress made in 1959. I fixed it up. He didn't look. "We've already chosen a veil." He pulled the door halfway, a polite dismissal. "Vivian's cousin knows a designer." When Elena called later, it wasn't to say thank you. It was to ask why I'd dropped by without texting first. Vivian's schedule for fittings was tight, and surprises made everything complicated. I listened. I said, "Of course." I heard my own voice and wondered when it had learned to step aside before anyone asked. In the weeks before the rehearsal, my hospital offered a supervisory role. More pay, more paperwork, fewer patients. I turned it down. I told myself that weddings are once, promotions are forever. I told myself you can buy forever. You cannot buy once. I told myself 100 little lies so I could sit with Eleanor at her final fitting and pretend I wasn't tired down to the bones that keep every other bone in place. She stood on the pedestal and looked at herself and said, "This is the beginning." I looked at her and thought, "No, baby, this is a threshold. Beginnings require humility, not a guest list." I swallowed the thought. I said, "You're beautiful." While she admired her reflection, Vivian drifted over to me, perfume like magnolias and money. "We appreciate everything you've done," she said, "the way you thank the caterer for adding extra canapes. Andrew's father is taking care of the bar. We'll need you to coordinate arrival times for your side so the photographs are orderly." I wanted to tell her my side wasn't a battalion. It was me, my sister, and 3 friends with sensible shoes and louder laughs. Instead, I said yes, because that is what I had trained myself to do. Say yes to anything that kept Elena's path smooth. I kept saying yes until the rehearsal night, when she looked at me with a face that used to crumple when I kissed her scraped knees and said, "You're not welcome at the ceremony." If you weren't there, you won't understand how the air changed. It thickened like something cooked too long. The room contracted around the words. Someone dropped a pen. The echo was obscene. Mark glanced at Vivian, and there was a transaction between their eyes. It looked like approval. Andrew didn't look at me. He looked at his shoes. Elena's mouth trembled and then hardened into a line I had never seen. "It's better this way," she said, voice cooler than any winter we'd ever lived. "For the aesthetic. For the flow. The flow. We were water then. We were something to be managed. I didn't kneel. I didn't negotiate. That part of me had died slowly with the radiator. Heat, the second mortgage, the lace veil in a bag nobody opened. All I did was inhale. And in that breath, I heard every night shift hum, every coupon tear, every whisper I'd sent to the ceiling. They stood up inside me. They put on armor I had forgotten they owned. I smiled, walked outside, and made a phone call. But this is the part you need to know. I didn't get there by accident. I got there by love that had been stretched until it became rope enough to pull a different future into place. I got there by sacrifice turned strategy. Everything I had ever signed, saved, scheduled, stored, every favor I had earned by being the woman who got things done, I put in my pocket like keys. I drove home past the one bedroom with the broken heater, the place I'd kept and kept up, even after refinancing it to finance Elena's life. The tenant's porch light was on. I thought of how I used to rock a baby to sleep by that light, counting the shadows like lullabies. I parked. I went inside. I opened a drawer where my careful little life had become an arsenal. People think revenge is wild. Mine wasn't. Mine was tidy. Mine had tabs and signatures and backup copies. Mine began the day I realized that the doorway they were shoving me out of was one I had installed. And if they wanted me out, then they could try living in the dark when I took the door with me. I pulled the contracts. I read the clauses. I checked the dates that had flowed past while other people admired centerpieces. I looked at the deposits that had come out of my accounts and at the tiny line that named the payer of record. The name on those lines wasn't Whitmore or Mark. It was mine. I didn't drink. I didn't rage. I made a list. I wrote down phone numbers. I opened my calendar and drew a neat red X through the next day. Then, like a surgeon who has done this 1,000 times, I scrubbed my heart clean. I pulled on a quiet, steady calm. I picked up the phone and started with the venue. They say a rehearsal is just practice. But that night, every word, every glance, every silence was already a verdict. The church smelled faintly of lilies and wax, though the candles weren't yet lit. Rows of polished pews gleamed under the chandeliers. I had arrived early out of habit. Mothers do that. We're always there first, to iron out the wrinkles no one else sees. I stood near the front, smoothing the edge of a runner that had curled up so nobody tripped. Nobody noticed me, of course. That was the pattern. Elena swept in, late, a vision in white silk rehearsal dress. Vivian hovered beside her like a general inspecting her troops. Andrew trailed behind, handsome but distracted, already fiddling with his cufflinks. I smiled, small but proud. I whispered to myself, "That's my girl." Then Elena's eyes found me. They didn't soften. They didn't shine. They narrowed. "Mum," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the hush. "We need to talk." Now heads turned. My sister Maria froze with her purse halfway off her shoulder. The planner clicked her pen nervously. Even the priest hesitated with his notes. Elena walked towards me, each step deliberate. Vivian followed, her pearls flashing like teeth. "What's wrong?" I asked softly, keeping my smile, pretending, hoping this was about flowers or seating. Her jaw tightened. "You're not welcome tomorrow." The words landed like gunfire. For a moment I thought I had misheard. I glanced at Andrew, desperate for contradiction. He looked at the floor. I don't understand," I stammered. "What do you mean I'm not welcome?" "I'm your mother." Vivian's hand slid onto Elena's arm, guiding her like a puppeteer. "Darling," she said smoothly, "this day needs to be elegant, cohesive. You've done so much for her already. Surely you understand. This isn't personal, not personal. As if erasing me from my own child's life could ever be neutral. Elena inhaled, as though gathering strength, then spoke with a voice that was not hers, but borrowed from Vivian's world. It's just the aesthetic, Mom. The vibe. You don't fit. I need everything to be perfect. The room spun. My chest tightened until every breath was a battle. Behind me, someone coughed to cover the silence. Not fit? I whispered. My throat burned. After everything I've done for you? Her eyes flickered, just for a second, the way they used to when she was a child caught in a lie. But she steadied herself. Please don't make this harder. Mark, my ex-husband, chose that moment to step forward. His tie gleamed red under the lights, bold, smug. It's better this way, he said. You've always had a tendency to overshadow things. Let Elena have her moment without distractions overshadow. That word tasted like poison. I thought of every shift I worked, every bill I paid, every night I sat awake praying her dreams would come true. And now I was a shadow. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shake the truth back into her bones. Instead, I stood perfectly still, as if carved from stone. Around us, the rehearsal creaked forward. Ushers practiced walking down the aisle. The planner whispered stage directions. But all I heard was the echo. You're not welcome. You don't fit. Better this way. Maria reached for me. Don't listen, Hermana. She whispered in Spanish. She doesn't mean it. But Elena did mean it. She meant every word, and worse, she believed them. The priest approached cautiously, as though mediating a fight between wolves. Perhaps, he suggested, we can discuss this later, in private. Vivian cut him off with a smile sharper than a blade. There's nothing to discuss. We have everything under control. That was the key. I had lost it. Somewhere between paying the florist, sewing the veil, and signing the checks, I had given it away. I straightened my spine. My pulse slowed. A strange clarity swept over me. Very well, I said softly, if that's what you want. Elena blinked. Relief flashed across her face, as if she thought I had surrendered. Vivian exhaled in triumph. Mark smirked, but Maria gasped, because she saw something they didn't. She saw the way my fingers curled into fists at my side. She saw the fire in my eyes. She had known me long enough to recognize what was coming. I turned, walked out of the church, and the heavy doors closed behind me with a final, echoing thud. Outside, the night air wrapped around me like a cloak. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a number I had saved months ago. Insurance, contracts, deposits, leverage, and pressed call. When the voice answered, I spoke calmly. It's time. Do it. And as I hung up, a single thought crystallized in my mind. If they wanted me gone, then gone I would be. But I would take the entire wedding with me. The drive home was silent. My hands gripped the wheel so tight the leather squeaked. Streetlights blurred into streaks of gold and silver. My mind replayed her face, her words. Each repetition stoked the furnace inside me. You don't fit! The irony was almost laughable. Everything she wore, everything she planned, everything she dreamed, it all fit because I had bent the world into shape for her. Without me, nothing would have held. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew tomorrow would not go as they planned. I poured myself tea, not wine. I needed clarity, not comfort. I sat at the kitchen table, laid out every contract, every invoice, every receipt I had kept meticulously. The proof of my invisible labor. One by one, I marked the lines that tethered their perfect day to me. The venue deposit, my name, the florist, my credit card, The photographer, my reference? Even the dressmaker owed me a favor from a surgery I'd assisted on her daughter. They thought I didn't fit, but I was the only thing holding their fantasy together. And tomorrow they would learn what happens when you cut out the foundation of your own house. The morning of the wedding rehearsal's aftermath, I woke before dawn. Not because of nerves, because of purpose. I braided my hair, steady hands weaving, just as I used to braid Elena's before school. I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time in years, I saw not a servant, not a shadow, but a woman with power. I picked up the phone and began the calls. Calm, precise, surgical. Hello, this is regarding the Whitmore-Rodriguez wedding tomorrow. I need to cancel my deposit. Yes, I'm the payer on record. No, do not release the funds to another party until the dispute is resolved. One by one, I dismantled their empire of glass. By mid-morning, the venue was reviewing arrangements. The florist had unexpected issues, the photographer texted me privately. Are you sure? This will tank them, I replied. Yes, and thank you. By noon, word was spreading. The gossip wheels of the Whitmores' circle turned fast. Whispers of cancellations, chaos, unpaid balances. Vivian's phone must have been buzzing like a wasp nest. I imagined her face. I savored it. But revenge is not only about logistics, it's about timing. It's about making sure the betrayal is exposed, not hidden. That evening, Maria came to my house. She sat at my table, eyes wide. Are you really doing this? I sipped my tea. They told me I don't fit. So I won't. She hesitated. This will ruin her, Hermana. Elena, she's young, she's confused. Vivian has poisoned her. I nodded. Yes, and maybe one day she'll see the truth. But right now, she needs to feel what it means to cut me out. Maria's eyes filled with tears. And Mark? I smiled coldly. Mark will feel it too. He wanted me gone. He'll get his wish. But he'll watch his daughter's perfect world crumble first. We sat in silence, two sisters bound by blood and fury. Outside, the night deepened, and inside, my plan solidified like stone. Tomorrow, the wedding would not happen, and when the truth came out, everyone would know why. The morning sun rose like a spotlight, gilding the houses and lawns in a cruel mockery of celebration. Somewhere across town, Vivian's mansion was buzzing. Florists unloading trucks, caterers setting silver trays, stylists curling hair into lacquered perfection. I could imagine them all, swarming like ants around Sugar, convinced they were building something grand. But I knew the truth. By the end of the day, their mountain would collapse into dust. I brewed my coffee slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the last moments of calm before the storm. The steam curled upward, and in it I saw all the years I had bent my back, sacrificed sleep, burned through every ounce of energy for Elena's sake. And now, the same devotion that had built her world would dismantle it. Revenge isn't rage, it's clarity, and clarity requires patience. By 8 o'clock, my list was in front of me. Not just numbers, not just names, but leverage. The venue, the Grand Whitmore Gardens estate. My deposit, my signature. Without that money, their contract dissolved. The estate was merciless about policy. No payer, no party. Those were the rules. The florist, Petals and Vine, a boutique shop owned by Rosa Delgado, whose mother I had cared for during a long, brutal hospital stay. I'd sat with Rosa in the waiting room, held her hand while the machines beeped. When her mother passed, she hugged me like family. Rosa owed me, not money, but loyalty. The photographer, a rising star with a fragile reputation. One word from me about unethical practices, and his fledgling career would stumble. He knew it. He would not risk my disapproval. The dressmaker, a seamstress I had supported when her business nearly went bankrupt, I'd Organized a fundraiser, pulled strings, made calls. She would never side against me. The catering. Paid partially by me, partially by Vivian. My portion was the larger half. Without full payment, the caterers wouldn't even unload. Piece by piece, I had unknowingly woven myself into every seam of this wedding. They thought I was the background, quiet, invisible, disposable. But I was the spine, and the spine holds everything upright until it bends or breaks. At 9, I made my first call. Whitmore Gardens, events office. How may I help you? This is regarding the Rodriguez-Whitmore wedding scheduled for tomorrow. I said evenly. Yes. This is Margaret Rodriguez. I am the payer of record on the deposit. I need to formally withdraw my reservation. There was a pause. Then, I see. May I ask why? Circumstances have changed. Please note that under your policy, no transfer of contract is permitted without the payer's authorization. I am not authorizing it. Her tone tightened. Understood. The reservation will be cancelled, pending review. Good. Please send confirmation in writing. Click. 1 domino down. By 10, Vivian must have received the first frantic email. I imagined her pearl-clad hands gripping her phone, dialing numbers with venom, demanding answers. But rules were rules, and for once, the rules were mine. I turned next to Rosa. Senora Margaret, she greeted warmly. How are you? I'm well, Rosa, but I need a favor, anything. You delivered flowers to Whitmore Gardens this morning, yes? Yes, we are arranging the altar. So many roses. Cancel them. Now silence. Then, but the bride, my daughter, I said, voice firm. The bride who told me I was not welcome at her wedding. Rosa, I paid that invoice. I signed it. I am asking you, woman to woman, friend to friend, cancel it. Let them scramble. Her breath caught. After everything you did for my mama, I owe you my loyalty. Consider it done. I closed my eyes, exhaling slow. Thank you. 2 dominoes. By noon, the gossip was wildfire. Maria called me, panicked. Do you know what's happening? The Whitmores are in chaos. Flowers gone, venue refusing entry. Elena's crying, screaming at the planner. Mark is trying to fix it, but nobody will take his calls. I stirred my soup calmly. Good. Good? Dios mio, hermana, this is your daughter's wedding. No, I said coldly. It was my daughter's betrayal. This is my correction. Maria went silent. She knew better than to argue. But I wasn't finished. Revenge isn't just about destruction, it's about revelation. People needed to see. So I called the photographer. Luis, it's Margaret. You're scheduled for the Whitmore wedding tomorrow. Yes, Mrs. Rodriguez. I have everything prepared. You won't be going. Stammering. What? Why not? Because if you do, I will. Tell every client in this town that you disregarded contracts and sided with people who defrauded your payer. Your reputation will vanish faster than your photographs. Do you understand? A long pause. Then, understood, ma'am. Another domino. The dressmaker was easier. I visited her shop in person, the faint smell of fabric and chalk dust, still the same as years before. Margaret, she exclaimed, what brings you here? I need you to hold the dress. Her brow furrowed. But you owe me, remember? When the fundraiser kept this place alive, this is the moment to repay it. Do not release the gown until I approve. No exceptions. Her eyes softened with guilt. You saved my livelihood. I won't forget. The dress stays here done. By mid-afternoon, the wedding had collapsed. The planner's schedule unraveled. The caterers refused to set foot on the estate without full payment. The florist trucks had turned around. The venue's gates were locked. And my daughter, my Elena, the girl I had once rocked to sleep under a broken radiator, was in Vivian's grand living room, sobbing into a tissue while her future mother-in-law hissed into phones and her father cursed my name. I should have felt guilt, but instead I felt peace. Cold, steady peace. At 6 that evening, I received the call I had been waiting for. It was Elena. Her voice cracked through the line. "Mom, what have you done?" I closed my eyes, picturing her. Mascara smudged, hands shaking. Finally, she was the one calling me. What I should have done a long time ago. I replied, "You've ruined everything. The venue won't let us in. The flowers are gone. The dress—" "Yes," I interrupted. "All gone. Because you told me I wasn't welcome. You cut me out, Elena. But you forgot one thing. Everything you have was tied to me." She gasped, a sound like a wound tearing open. "Mum, please. People are here. They're whispering. Vivian says they'll fix it. Vivian can't fix this," I said, "because she never built it." I did. And now it's finished. There was silence, then a sob. "Why? Why would you do this to me?" Finally, I let my voice break, sharp with years of swallowed pain. "Because you did it to me first." And then I hung up. Night fell. The Whitmore's mansion sat dark, its lights dimmed, its gates closed. Guests who had flown across states left with murmurs of scandal. The newspapers would get wind by morning. The perfect Whitmore-Rodriguez union had dissolved into whispers and shame. And me? I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, the cicadas buzzing like applause. This was only the beginning, because the real confrontation hadn't even started. When the phone stopped ringing, the silence in my house was deafening. Dozens of missed calls, Elena, Mark, even Andrew, and Vivian, her name flashing across my screen like a curse. I let every one of them go unanswered, because I knew what was coming. And sure enough, just after 9 that night, headlights swept across my driveway. 3 cars, doors slammed, voices rose. I didn't move at first. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping tea, letting them march up my steps like soldiers storming a fortress. The pounding on the door rattled the frame. "Mom! Open this door right now!" Elena's voice, high, sharp, desperate. Behind her, Vivian's clipped tone. "Margaret, this childish stunt has gone far enough!" And then Mark's voice, low and venomous. "You've destroyed everything." I stood slowly, setting my cup down. My hands didn't shake. I walked to the door, unlocked it, and swung it wide. There they were. Elena, her makeup streaked, hair falling from its perfect bun. Andrew, pale, shifting from foot to foot. Vivian, immaculate, even in fury, pearls tight around her throat. And Mark, his jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might break. I leaned against the doorframe, calm as stone. "Well, look who decided to remember where I live." Elena shoved past me, storming into the living room. "What did you do?" she screamed, whirling on me. "The venue, the flowers, the dress, everything's gone. Everyone is talking about us like we're a joke." Vivian followed, icy fury radiating from her. "Do you realize what you've done to our reputation? To my family's standing?" I laughed, short and bitter. "Oh, forgive me, Vivian. I forgot that a woman's worth is measured in whispers at your country club." Mark entered last, slamming the door behind him. "Enough games, Margaret. Fix this." Now I crossed my arms. "No." The word hung in the air, heavy, final. Elena's voice cracked. "Why? Why would you do this to me? I'm your daughter." I stepped closer, eyes burning into hers. "Because you stood in front of me, after everything I've done for you, and told me I wasn't welcome at your wedding. You erased me, Elena. You made me a stranger, and strangers don't pay for parties." She flinched, tears spilling. "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did." I snapped. "You meant every word. You wanted me gone because I didn't fit. Because Vivian told you I'd ruin the aesthetic. because your father whispered in your ear that I was an embarrassment, and you chose them over me." Vivian bristled. She chose better. "You're bitter, Margaret. Petty, a woman clinging to scraps of power she doesn't deserve." I turned to her, my voice low and lethal. "Better. You call using my money, my sweat, my sacrifices better? Tell me, Vivian, what have you ever built? What have you ever bled for? You waltzed in with your pearls and your judgment, and you thought you could erase me. But you forgot the simplest rule: you cannot erase the foundation." Mark stepped forward, sneering. "This is pathetic. You've embarrassed yourself in front of everyone. Elena will never forgive you for this." I met his gaze, unflinching. "Good. Then she'll know how it feels, because I forgave you too many times, Mark. The late nights that weren't really at the office, the promotions you spent on golf instead of groceries, the way you let me bleed myself dry to pay bills while you smiled at the Whitmores and played the proud father. Forgive. I'm done forgiving." He flushed, anger breaking through his smug facade. "You're insane." "No," I said softly. "I'm free." Elena sank onto the couch, face buried in her hands. "This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life," she whispered. I knelt in front of her, forcing her to look at me. "And it could have been. But happiness built on lies doesn't last, Elena. I gave you everything, and when I asked for nothing, you gave me exile." Her voice shook. I thought if I just did what they wanted, everything would be perfect. I glanced at Vivian, whose lips tightened, but I kept my focus on my daughter. Perfect isn't real. What's real is the mother who stayed up all night sewing your prom dress, the one who worked 3 shifts so you could go to college, the one who refinanced her only security so you wouldn't drown in debt. That's me, that's family, and you threw me away for perfection." Elena sobbed, broken. I didn't know what to do. "Then learn," I said, standing, "because this is what happens when you forget who built your world." Vivian rose, fury flashing in her eyes. "This is outrageous!" "We'll sue. We'll take back every cent you think you control." I smiled, cold and sharp. "Good luck. Every deposit, every contract, every receipt, they all have my name. You'll get nowhere, and if you try, I'll make sure the papers know exactly how the Whitmores tried to erase the woman who paid for their fantasy. Your precious reputation will crumble faster than those roses I cancelled." She paled, her poise cracking. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." Andrew finally spoke, his voice trembling. This is a disaster. Eleanor, maybe we should postpone." She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Postpone? Everyone will know. We'll be ruined." I sighed. "Then maybe you'll finally understand the difference between love and appearances." The room was heavy with silence. Vivian seethed. Mark glared. Eleanor wept. Andrew fidgeted like a boy caught in a storm he didn't know how to weather. And me? I felt lighter than I had in decades. For the first time, I wasn't the servant, the fixer, the quiet backbone no one thanked. I was the storm. At last, Vivian straightened, smoothing her dress. "Come, Andrew. We're leaving. These people are beneath us." She tugged at Elena's arm. "Darling, let's go. We'll rebuild." Without her. But Elena didn't move. She looked at me, really looked, her eyes red, her face pale. And in that moment, I saw the little girl who once clutched my hand on the first day of school. The little girl who whispered, "Don't let go, Mommy." Her lips parted. "I'm sorry." The words were small, fragile, but they cracked something inside me. I didn't answer. Not yet. Vivian hissed with frustration. "Enough of this!" She stormed out, dragging Andrew with her. Mark followed, muttering curses under his breath. And then it was just me and Elena, sitting in the wreckage of her perfect world. She whispered again, broken. I'm sorry. I sat beside her, my voice gentle but firm. Sorry doesn't fix everything. Sorry doesn't undo what you said. You cut me out, Elena. And you need to live with what that feels like. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought you'd always be there, no matter what. I swallowed hard, my throat aching. I was. For 25 years I was, but even mothers have limits. She reached for my hand, tentative, trembling. Can we fix this? I let her hold it, for a moment. Then I pulled away. Not tonight. And with that I rose, walked to the door, and opened it. Elena, I said softly, go home. Think about who you want to be, because tomorrow there is no wedding, and there may not be a mother waiting either. Her sob echoed in the night as she stumbled down the steps. I closed the door behind her, and for the first time in my life I chose myself. Morning came with the sound of silence where there should have been bells. No music, no laughter, no wedding. By 9 a.m. the neighborhood around Whitmore Gardens buzzed with confusion. Cars arrived. Guests in polished shoes and glittering dresses stepped out only to be met by locked gates. The estate staff, stern and unapologetic, turned them away with clipped explanations. The event has been cancelled. No entry whispers swelled like storm clouds. Cancelled? On the morning of the wedding? Why? Phones lit up with calls, texts, rumors racing faster than traffic. And with every unanswered question, one truth spread. Something had gone terribly, deliciously wrong. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, watching my own neighbors peek over hedges as news traveled. A text buzzed on my phone from Maria. Hermana, it's everywhere. People are saying Vivian fainted when the venue refused her. Reporters already sniffing. Dios mío. I smiled into my mug. Good. I whispered. By noon, the gossip lines had caught fire. At the country club, matrons clutched pearls as they traded stories. They say the florist pulled out last minute. No, the caterers abandoned them. I heard the photographer refused to come. Can you imagine? All those guests. No wedding, no explanation. It's a scandal. And then, the knife twist. Apparently, her mother pulled the plug. That rumor spread like gasoline on dry brush. The woman they had all dismissed, ignored, pitied, the invisible mother? She was suddenly the most talked-about name in town. By evening, social media was ablaze. Pictures of guests in gowns standing in parking lots, hashtags trending, wedding that never was, memes comparing Vivian's pearls to shackles. And in every post, one detail emerged clearer and clearer. The bride's mother had controlled the purse strings, and she had cut them. Some mocked, some sympathized. But most reveled in the chaos, because nothing tastes sweeter to society than the downfall of the proud. Meanwhile, Vivian scrambled. She called in favors, spun stories, tried to paint me as unstable. But receipts don't lie. The venue leaked emails with my signature, my payments. The florist confirmed my cancellation, done politely, legally, firmly. The dressmaker admitted the gown remained locked away because I had claimed it. Every thread led back to me. And people didn't see a bitter, crazy woman. They saw a mother who had been erased, who finally struck back. The whispers turned. She sacrificed everything for that girl, and this is how she was treated? No wonder she snapped. I'd have done worse. Honestly, I admire her. Took down the Whitmores with a single phone call. My revenge had become legend. 2 days later, the local paper ran the headline. The article detailed my role, my sacrifices, the financial trail, the betrayal. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years nodded respectfully as I passed. At the grocery store, the cashier whispered, "Good for you, honey." Vindication tasted sweeter than sugar. But the Whitmores? They burned. Vivian stopped showing her face at luncheons. Her friends distanced themselves, not wanting scandal to stain their reputations. Andrew, humiliated, postponed his next business venture indefinitely. Even Mark slunk back into obscurity, colleagues whispering about how his ex-wife had more power than he ever did. And Eleanor, my poor, foolish daughter, she bore the heaviest weight. The whispers followed her everywhere. At coffee shops. That's her, the bride whose own mother cancelled her wedding. At work. Do you think she's trustworthy? If her family's like that. Even among friends. I can't believe she let Vivian treat her mom that way. What kind of daughter does that? Her phone buzzed with sympathy texts that doubled as gossip fuel. Invitations dried up. Respect vanished. She called me once, voice trembling. Mom, they're all talking about me. I can't go anywhere without stares. Andrew barely looks at me. Vivian won't speak to me except to scold me. I don't know what to do. I listened quietly, then said, now you know how it feels to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be unwanted. She sobbed. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I closed my eyes. Yes, and mistakes have consequences. The final blow came a week later. The magazine that was set to feature their society wedding of the season published instead a scathing exposé. The article quoted anonymous. Insiders, friends of friends, staff, even a planner's assistant, who confirmed what everyone suspected. That Vivian had pushed me out, that Elena had chosen appearances over her own mother, that the foundation of their perfect day was built on my labor. The headline photo wasn't Vivian's mansion or Elena's gown. It was me. An old picture, me in my nurse's scrubs, tired but smiling, holding Elena as a toddler on my hip. The caption read, The mother who said no. The Whitmores couldn't recover. Their name, once polished like silver, now dragged through mud. Every charity gala, every business deal, every handshake, they were met with thin smiles and hidden smirks. Mark stopped calling. Vivian stopped pretending. Andrew retreated into silence. And Elena? She began showing up at my door, not to beg for money, not to demand favors, but simply to sit, eyes red, voice small. Mom, she whispered one night, I'm so ashamed. I held my tea, let the steam rise between us. Good. Shame teaches. She nodded, tears falling. I lost everything. I finally looked at her, my heart both heavy and fierce. No, Elena, you threw it away. The world now knew the truth, and the justice was not just in their humiliation, it was in my reclamation. For years I had been the invisible backbone. Now I was the storm that everyone remembered. And when people spoke my name, they didn't say shadow or outsider. They said, with a mix of fear and respect, she's the one who ended the wedding. The storm had passed, but the ruins remained. Whitmore Gardens returned to hosting other weddings, other smiles, other photographs, but everyone remembered the day its gates were shut on a bride who had exiled her mother. The whispers didn't fade. They hardened into legend. Vivian retreated first. The once proud matriarch who never missed a luncheon began cancelling appearances. Her pearls disappeared from photographs. Rumour said she stopped answering calls from her friends, most of whom had only ever been vultures dressed in silk. Mark tried to salvage dignity by throwing himself into work, but whispers follow men too. Colleagues asked behind closed doors. If he couldn't manage his own family, how can he manage us? His temper grew short, his smile brittle. He no longer smirked when he saw me in town. He looked away. Andrew drifted quietly out of Elena's life. No screaming breakup, no dramatic farewell. Just fewer calls, then fewer visits, until one day he simply wasn't there. His family, the Whitmores, decided the Rodriguez connection was too tainted to risk. And Elena, my daughter, my blood, was left alone in the wreckage. At first she resisted. She tried to rebuild, to pretend nothing had happened. She attended small gatherings, posted filtered photos with captions about new beginnings. But whispers drowned her out. People nodded politely, then laughed behind her back. Job offers rescinded, quietly. Invitations dried up. And slowly she began to unravel. One evening, weeks after the non-wedding, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, Elena stood there, clutching a paper bag, her eyes hollow. "Mom," she whispered, "can I come in?" I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed to open my arms, to cradle her, to erase the distance. But another voice, the voice forged from betrayal, held me still. "Yes," I said at last. "Come in." She stepped inside, small, fragile. She placed the paper bag on the table. I opened it and found lemon bars, crooked, uneven, dusted clumsily with sugar. "I remembered you used to make these," she said softly. I tried. I stared at them, at her, and something inside me cracked, not fully, but enough to let the memory through. Her as a child, licking sugar from her fingers, giggling. Her as a teenager, rolling her eyes but sneaking seconds. Her as my daughter. We sat at the table in silence. She pushed a plate toward me. I took one, bit into it. Too tart, crust burned, but it tasted like effort, like apology. I nodded once. "Thank you." She broke down, sobbing into her hands. "I ruined everything. I let them turn me against you. I thought if I made them happy, I'd be happy too. But I lost you. And now I've lost everything. I closed my eyes, the ache in my chest heavy. You didn't lose me, Eleanor. You threw me away." She sobbed harder. "Can you ever forgive me?" I let the question hang. The old me would have rushed in, soothed her, said yes instantly. But I had learned. Forgiveness without change is just another form of servitude. "I don't know," I said finally. "Forgiveness takes time." "And proof." Her tearful eyes met mine. "I'll prove it. I'll earn it." I looked at her, at the broken pieces of a woman who once thought she could replace me with pearls and polished halls. And I whispered, "Then start." The weeks that followed were strange. Elena returned again and again, not with demands, not with grand gestures, but with small things. A home-cooked meal, help in the garden, quiet afternoons where she sat with me. No words, just presence. For the first time in years, I saw her. Not the polished mask Vivian crafted, not the ambitious facade Mark encouraged, but my girl. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Some nights I lay awake, remembering her words. "You're not welcome." They still cut. They always would. But other nights I remembered her tears, her lemon bars, her effort. And slowly, very slowly, the wound began to scar. One afternoon Maria came by, shaking her head with disbelief. "Hermana, you've become a legend. People whisper your name at every party. They say, 'That's the mother who ended the Whitmore wedding.'" I chuckled bitterly. Funny, isn't it? I spent my whole life invisible, and the moment I finally say no, I become unforgettable. She squeezed my hand. "You taught them a lesson. You taught her a lesson, and maybe you taught yourself one too." I nodded. "Yes, that real family isn't built on appearances. It's built on respect, on loyalty months passed, life settled. The world moved on to fresher scandals. But in our little corner, nothing was quite the same. Elena still came around. Some days she tried too hard. Other days she simply sat and listened. It would never erase the wound, but perhaps it could stitch something new in its place. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky gold, she whispered, "Mom, thank you for giving me another chance." I studied her. Don't thank me yet. You're still earning it. She nodded. I know. But I will. And in her eyes, for the first time in years, I saw sincerity. As for me, I finally understood something that had taken me decades of sacrifice to see. I had spent my life believing love meant giving everything until nothing was left. But love without boundaries isn't love, it's servitude. And when family betrays you, you don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them your money. You don't owe them your soul. You owe yourself justice. The world remembered the scandal, but I remembered the lesson. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the cicadas hum, I think back to that day at the rehearsal. The words that tried to break me. You're not welcome. And I smile, because in the end it wasn't me who was unwelcome, it was them. Final reflection. Real family isn't who you're related to. Real family is who stands beside you when the world turns cold. And when they betray you, you don't beg, you rise.